Well, good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Theological Insomniac. I'm glad you're here. It's approaching 10 o'clock Mountain Time, and a blessing to be here. If this is your first time to be with us, it's kind of a crude operation. We got not the best sound, not the best video, all that kind of stuff. That's because I'm in charge, because it's the middle of the night. Well, not really the middle of the night. It's almost 10 p.m. Do you know where your children are? And we nonetheless will gather together and have a good time tonight talking about, let's see, what can we talk about? Let's talk about here we go. We'll talk about the normal, the abnormal, and the paranormal. How's that? And as we do so, I tell you what, I'm operating everything here on these late nights. So let's switch the background. Let's just get the stars there. How's that? Welcome to our program tonight. It's laid back, it's easy, it's fun, it's what you want to talk about: normal, abnormal, paranormal, theological, worldview, church, coronavirus. What is it? And it's good to see you. Some of the left coast is with us here tonight. I see surviving and striving to serve Jesus. Amen. Got two Fresno pastors here with us tonight. And welcome. Good to see you. You're right, Mike. Earthquakes in Utah, pests in Africa, viruses everywhere, wars and rumors of wars. Even so, come Lord Jesus. Amen. From Smithville, Missouri. We're glad that you're here with us, Mike. Good to see you. And a blessing. Oh, there's Vina down under in Australia. How's coronavirus looking in Australia these days? What kind of measures are being taken there? And interesting to see that. I heard, but Pastor Roger mentions Trump had a fun time at the press conference this morning. I heard that, but I didn't. I didn't go back to hear what it was. All I hear is people talking about him having a fun time at the press conference this morning. I understand he told somebody off or something like that. As I hear, I spent the day looking at my new granddaughter. And that was pleasant, and that was a joy, and that's what I did. So I didn't get into all of that too much, but nonetheless, called out a reporter from NBC. Well, good for him. That's probably what needed to do. So Roger in Arizona, who should be here working our sound, Roger here in Arizona, says, looks like Trump is considering a 2-week countrywide quarantine. I, again, have been just a little bit absentee from the news today. I've been reading some about the coronavirus here even this evening. And I'm just still not convinced. I am one of the last persons maybe around, except you, who are not convinced that the measures we're taking actually are going to make any difference. I noticed Roger put something out earlier about Governor Newsom of California saying eventually, what was it, something like 60% of Californians were going to get it. And so then you have the question, what would it have been if California wasn't under lockdown right now? What are you, under stay-at-home orders, I believe, with at least 3 states under stay-at-home orders? And so if 56%. Yeah, if 56% are going to get it with what we have done, what would it have been without that in California? Would it have been 60% or 70 or 80%? And how much difference would that have made in the hospitals, which I understand where the crisis and concern seems to be? Is that enough? Or was it too little too late and we should have done more? I mean, there's a lot of different ways you can go with this particular issue. But as Dan says, in Arizona, trying to push that off, make it later, maybe it's 56% are going to get it, but they're not going to get it as fast, and so everything's going to be okay in terms of the abilities for hospitals to handle it. And if that could be true and is proven to be true, then I'll accept it. I'll take it. I'm not sure it's going to be proven to be true, but nonetheless, yeoman's effort, I suppose. Rick, our California governor, called up some National Guard for humanitarian efforts. I talked to National Guardsmen in my church, and he is on alert. It's interesting, calling up the National Guard for humanitarian efforts sure makes them ready to be used for other efforts, and that could be a preparatory matter. It seems to me like if you're telling every Californian to stay home, some of them are not going to obey. What do you do with those who do not obey? What do you do with those that decide to go camping? What do you do with those who decide to go to Nevada or wherever it is they're going to go? They're going to go visit their mother in St. Louis. What do you do with them? Do you call out the National Guard? Do you do like the mayor of Albuquerque now has the authority to do because the city council gave it to them in their cover of night? Do you stop gasoline sales? What is it? What measures do you take? And does it matter if we have constitutional rights if there's a pandemic health emergency? Can a pandemic health emergency override those rights? Should it be able to override those rights? Should we be able to legislate these things? Should a governor or a president have, or a mayor for that matter, have the authority on his own or her own to be able to take these measures? These are, of course, questions we have been asking here. Tara in Oklahoma says $1 trillion bailout won't do you any good if the economy goes by the multi-trillions. The $1,000 they want to give you won't even buy a loaf of bread. Yeah, it really is a drop in the bucket. And again, I'm going to look at some articles here in a moment, and you have to wonder, was the cost worth it for what you're getting? We are buying something by staying home, by forcing everyone to stay home, by closing down all of the businesses, closing down the education, closing down the industries, closing down travel, closing down the churches, closing down the restaurants, closing down the barbers. I don't care about that. And by doing all this, there is a cost to it. Is it worth the cost? Now, you say, well, how much can you, how much dollar amount can you put on a human life? You can't. But nonetheless, you still do have to determine, is it worth trillions and trillions and trillions of dollars for how many lives are we going to save? I'm still not convinced, even of the 11,000 deaths that we've got worldwide, I'm still not convinced that a vast majority of those probably were going to die anyway of underlying conditions. And it just so happened that they had the coronavirus, and therefore we call the cause of death the coronavirus. I know this sounds heartless, and I apologize for doing it, but are we delaying a person's death for 3 weeks or 4 weeks at the cost of the American way of life, honestly? And I think you can put aside even the economic cost, the civil liberties cost, the freedoms cost. What a huge issue that we are dealing with there. I guess they're not going to go camping, are they? National parks are closed. Rick's got a good philosophical question for those who believe in evolutionary theory. If that evolutionary model of survival of the fittest is true, why are we trying to stop it? That obviously he's speaking tongue-in-cheek, because he certainly doesn't believe in that model. But if that's what they really believe, then that's the way to overcome it, isn't it? Survival of the fittest, and take care of it in that particular manner. Yeah, Dan's right. Italy's numbers show that this is way more deadly than the flu, although it depends. We're going to look at a couple of things, some statistics here. But this comment that Dan gives about no constitution during a national emergency, I think that we ought to at least legislate that. And if we don't legislate it, then we ought to, it would even be more if we would constitutionalize it, that here is the rights that we are willing to give up as the people if there is a national emergency. You know, in the early days of the Empire of Rome, there was a method for dealing with a crisis. And they had the Roman Senate, of course, and some of the checks and balances that were there. But in the early days of the Roman Empire, there was the ability to for the Senate to institute a dictatorship. In the case of a crisis where there is no time, somebody's got to act, they could put in a dictator. That dictator could dictate for a 6-month period of time. After that 6 months, he could never serve in public office again. And it was used on a number of occasions through the Roman Empire. It had to do more with an enemy from without in the times of warfare, and they determined that they needed it, and they selected some men of great reputation in those days, and it saved the empire. Is that what we want as a constitutional republic? We can come up with that. We can do that. But I'm a little afraid that really the policies that we have are far more often bureaucratic policies than they are legislative policies, and they're certainly not constitutional policies. I don't know that the Constitution, and if there's an authority on the Constitution here, someone tell me, I don't know that the Constitution has any provisions for a national emergency. I don't think it gives anybody any extra powers. The president's got some war powers that he can take, but those are constitutional, and this is not war experience. Even if you want to call it, well, it's a war on drugs. Well, it's a war on poverty. Well, presidents have used those in the past, but they haven't taken war powers in order to do it. These are bureaucratic issues that are used, and the bureaucracy. A few weeks ago, we were calling it the deep state, and we were frightened at the deep state and the things that the deep state could do. But now we're all kind of for it. As a matter of fact, while I'm thinking about that, I have a feeling that, let's go back a few years. Most who listen to this program, of course, are going to be conservative. So back a few years when Obama was president, what if during the H1N1 pandemic, for example, we'll look at here in a little bit, what if President Obama had done the things that President Trump is today doing? What if the governors across America had done the things during the Obama administration that President Trump and the governors of the 50 states are now doing? I have a feeling that if the response that we have today was given, let's say in 2009 under the Obama administration, the conservatives and the right would be rising up and maybe even trying to overthrow. They would have said, this is a runaway train, stop this thing. Why are we complicit with it now? And should we be complicit with it now? I'm a Trump supporter. And I don't even like saying, that I this morning was on a program, Stand Up for the Truth, and they asked me to do some grading, and I forgot what I graded Trump. I think I gave him a C. Maybe it was a B-. I can't remember. And really the only reason I gave him a C is because he's been somewhat of a calming factor until today, maybe when he told the NBC reporter something. But that calmed some of us and probably put the NBC reporter where he needed to be. I haven't even seen it. But he's been presidential. He's been out there. He's been talking. He's been, putting the task force and letting them talk to us every day. Some of that is good. But even at that, again, and he obviously doesn't do anything on the state level. He might eventually do something on the federal level that puts us all under some kind of house arrest. But I just think that if this same scenario was happening with Obama as president, the right would be up in arms completely and totally today. Let me know if you think I'm wrong on that. But yeah, no constitution during a national emergency. That seems to be the case. Should that be the case, is there any legislation or any constitutional provision for constitutionality to go away during the time of a national crisis? I don't think there is. Maybe there should be. Maybe we should have a national discussion about this when it's all over. But I don't know. I think that we're kind of trampling over the Constitution right now. And we do it so fast. We got to do it now. We got to act today. Now. We can't wait. That's always a recipe for disaster. That's always saying maybe we're not totally looking at the numbers. Maybe we're not reading this correctly. You know, numbers don't lie, but people lie with numbers. I said it earlier today. And I'm still not trusting this whole thing. Tara says the whole story is we're flattening the curve to stay under the line. But if they don't manage to raise the line over the next 2 weeks, then the economy continues to collapse. People will revolt. Americans won't mind staying home 3 weeks. If they raise the bar high enough, we'll all be able to come out in 3 weeks. Now, if that's correct, and President Trump, has put this forth, 15 days, do it for 15 days. I want to respect that and say, okay, well, let's try it. What if it doesn't work in 15 days? Is it another 15 days? Can we survive another 15 days? Are they going to send us $1,000 or $1,200 or whatever they decide to send us again? Are they going to do it every month because we can't go to work? Are they going to start paying rents? Are they going to force landowners or homeowners, property owners not to charge rent? Or as a matter of fact, I think that what do you call it? Evictions are temporarily outlawed. I'll use that. It's not really the right phrase, but how long can that go? People will begin to take advantage of it. There will be graft and corruption that takes place in all of these areas. What do we do if this doesn't flatten the curve? And on what basis do we know that curve is flattening? Is it hospitalizations, or is it number of people that have been tested positive, or is it deaths? What number are we going to go by? Seems like we need to have, again, a national discussion to say, here's the goal. This is what we're going to watch, and that's why we're watching it. And everybody can look. I'm not concerned that the number of positive cases go up. I think that's a testing measure. And they happen to find the places where it's spreading quickly or has spread quickly. They go in there and test, and all of a sudden, the numbers, they tripled today, absolutely tripled. But that's chasing the problem, if you will, with the test kits. And I think it doesn't speak really to it in all of that. Tara goes on to say, if the bar stays the same and we collapse the economy so that the same number of people die anyway, it will be all for naught. And now people will die from being in a national depression. I think you're right. There is a cost to it. We ought to look at that. I last night went to the grocery store after our Thursday night Bible study. Honestly, I wouldn't have gone to the grocery store other than there's this panic. I don't know if panic's the right word. People are being prudent, like me, and saying, you know what? I don't know what's going to happen. Maybe I ought to go see what they have and buy it. And I tell you, there's a couple of thoughts I had as I was going through the grocery store. First of all, the grocery store I normally go to was already closed because they're restocking. So I went to the next best grocery store, and it was already closed for the same reason. So I went to the grocery store I don't like. And I was going through, and the shelves were just, every aisle pretty near, there was big empty spaces. And that in and of itself not only was I at the grocery store when I normally wouldn't have been, and it's not that we really had any needs. We had all the food we needed for today and tomorrow. But I'm thinking, okay, I don't know how long this is going to last. Maybe I ought to go buy some more, pork chops or something. Just stick them in the freezer. That's prudence, really. You're doing that. I'm doing that. And they haven't asked us to say only buy food for tomorrow and we'll stock up. If they do, I'll probably say, okay, I got it in there. But I went. Now, here's the psychological thing that goes on. I see the emptiness of the aisles, and guess what I start doing? They got green beans. I better get green beans. I don't even like canned green beans. I bought 4 cans because they were there. And they were wrapped up in one, and it was a good price. Oh, 4 cans of green beans. We probably haven't used 4 cans of green beans all year. Why am I buying 4 cans of green beans? Because I don't know if I'm going to be able to go down and get my bacon cheeseburger with green chili on it. That's what I'd rather have than green beans. And so just the emptiness on the shelf psychologically is telling me you better get some green beans. Reminds me of a funny story years ago when we were in Houston and a hurricane was coming in and everybody was wiping out the grocery stores. You know how that is when there's a storm in. And everybody was wiping out the grocery stores, and Shelly went. And literally, I kid you not, she came home with groceries, and there wasn't a lot of meat and all that kind of stuff. And she bought sardines. We've never had a can of sardines in our life. I said, honey, I'm never going to eat those. We don't eat sardines. We'll get in the car and drive to Wyoming if we have to. We're not eating sardines. But the fear of empty shelves causes us to buy something. And that's what I did last night. I bought 4 cans of green beans. And I don't know why. I bought a package of Oreos too, because, if you're going to be holed up in your house, you just well have Oreos, double stuff. And, but the second thought I had, not only one is the psychological thing of what's going on here, but the second thought I have is, are we entering into a new normal? How long is it going to be? Are we going to come back to where everything's fully stocked? I remember years ago, this was in the 80s, I was a young man, and after church, we had a potluck lunch, and I was helping the ladies kind of clean up the kitchen after the potluck lunch, and I took some foil that one of the ladies had used to cover something, and they'd wash the dish. I threw it in the trash. And Gladys Louder came up and pulled that out of the trash. And she said, that is perfectly good. We do not throw that away. Now, why did she do that? That was totally foreign to me. But it wasn't totally foreign to her because she had been through the Great Depression. And having come through the Great Depression, it made a psychological impact that says aluminum foil can be reused. Now, I wonder, especially if this goes on very long, are we getting into a new normal where we become hoarders because we're afraid that one word from, the World Health Organization, and all of a sudden everything's gone again? And so we go out and this becomes our normal. We no longer trust that, as we've always done before. I think the vast majority of Americans buy food about for 2 days. We live on a very short cycle in groceries, and I know there's some that go once a month, but that's actually a very rare person. Most people go as needed, and in between they eat out several times. And that's been our normal. Is this going to change because of this? Even psychologically, is it going to change? Even if the supply chain gets fixed, is this going to change? Carlos, I think you're exactly right. Carlos says China is laughing at how easy it is to shut down our country. And, it makes you wonder who's behind it. If anyone's behind it, maybe this is just, it all happened this way. But yeah, I think you're right that there's some laughter going on through there. power companies requiring employees to stay at work continuously. That's interesting. That's what you do in time of a storm. It's fairly normal. They probably have that in their contracts. But again, this is not a storm. But power companies perhaps are saying, look, if I send this employee home and he gets sick or whatever, he's unable to come back, he goes to the grocery store and gets whatever, we're gonna be without, and then we're gonna be in real trouble, and we have to provide power. And so they're stepping into emergency powers here, and they're doing it because the city government did it, because the mayor did it, or the county government did it, because the county government did it, and the governor did it, and the president did it, and this is just trickling down to where now the poor guy that works at the co-op can't go home, it's an interesting thing. Joe says, what's your answer for hospitals being overwhelmed? First of all, I still don't totally believe the numbers. They might be, and maybe the right thing to do is keep this down. What is the percentage of the numbers that are going into the hospitals? Again, right now we've got 275,000 confirmed cases. Of those 275,000 confirmed cases, this is worldwide, how many of those go into the hospital? I think I saw the other day we had 1 million hospital beds, if I'm not mistaken. I may be off on that number. But worldwide, we do not yet have even that many people who have the virus. And of the 275,000, what is it, 20%? I don't know, that are going to need hospitalization. In the United States, it is confirmed 19,000 cases. Again, that's 2,000, 4,000 people perhaps that are going into the hospitals. So do they have some evidence that says we are expecting, let's see, what would it be here if we've got, we're expecting 500,000 cases, mathematically. We're expecting 500,000 cases instead of, 20,000 cases? So are we going to go from 20,000 cases to 500,000 cases? Now, they can say, yes, that's what we're going to do. Yeah. But based on what? Based on what? I mean, you go and again, you look at these numbers here. China doesn't have 500,000 cases, and they're on the way down. So based upon the fact that we think that's what's going to happen, you better have some risk of loss. That is to say, we think that 500,000 people are going to get coronavirus. That brings us to the number that will bring it. And somebody should raise their hand, a reporter should, and maybe be called out for it, should raise their hand and say, based upon what do you think we're going to have 500,000 cases in the United States when we have today currently 275,000, roughly half of that in the world? So based upon what are you saying we're going to get to 500,000? Well, we think you better have some kind of science, not prophecy, but some kind of science, some kind of math. And thus far, I haven't seen that the math has been shown. Where is this? Now, of course, you can take this little trajectory right down here and take it. But if we were to look at that chart earlier and take the trajectory right there, of course it would have gone to, I don't know if I'm supposed to take this trajectory right here or this one right here or this one right here, what is it, or this recovery, and of course you'd have to do all the math there. So I just think that Maybe this is exactly right. But, let's consider some of the things that have happened in the past. I don't know. Let's go to the H1N1. This was 2009. Here is an article. CDC estimated that 151,000 to 575,000 people worldwide died in the first year the virus circulated. Now, this one was completely opposite. There were, let's see, what is it? 80% of the deaths were in people younger than 65 years of age. So these were mostly children, teenagers, and young adults. 151,000 to 575,000 in the first year. Are they expecting that for coronavirus, for COVID? If they are expecting that, they haven't shown us that. They haven't told us that. And we didn't have a crisis of hospital beds in 2009. Do we have less hospital beds? Maybe we do. Maybe in this 10, 11 years, maybe we have 20% less hospital beds. I don't know. If we do, it's probably because government regulation has prohibited the adequate response there. But I don't know. My guess is we don't have less hospital beds through there. If we look there's an interesting article. We won't have time to look at it all tonight, but an interesting article on the Center for Disease Control and Prevention. It's the 2009 H1N1 pandemic summary highlights, April 2009 to April 2010. It goes, as you can see, this is a historic archive. It's not updated because it tells what happened. And it talks about the H1N1 flu pandemic. I know that we're not supposed to say this is a flu. It's like the flu because this is a lot worse. But I also know that we had 100 and let's see, I lost my thing. We've got, what is it? 12,000 deaths, and that one had maybe 600,000 deaths. Can I say that again? 575,000 deaths in 1 year, mostly of young people, and we didn't have this response. So I'm not seeing the correlation. What did we do wrong there? Were our hospitals overcome? And what did we learn from that? How is this different? I know you keep telling me it's different. Yes, I hear that. It's different. But the chart you're showing me every day is not leading to the same conclusions we had from H1N1. And you got the records. They were right there. 2009, H1N1, first detected in the United States. It's you California people, if you go on to read that, a 13-year-old boy in California, or 13, 15-year-old boy, something like that, got it in California. 2 days later, there was an 8-year-old in California, lived 130 miles away. He got it. No known connection between the two. And there was a response that ramped up. Here's all the detail of the response that ramped up. By April the 25th, this was again earlier in April, that loss of faith there. But by April the 25th, under the rules of the International Health Regulations, the Director General of WHO declared a public health emergency of international concern. The federal government went and did a bunch of things here in 2009. April 27th, the WHO Director General raised the level of influenza pandemic alert from phase 3 to phase 4. April 29th, it went from phase 4 to phase 5. And CD laboratories boost the nature's testing. Look at this. Social distancing measures are meant to increase distance between people. Measures include staying home when ill, unless to seek medical care, avoiding large gatherings, telecommuting, implementing school closures. This is not new, except that in 2009 we didn't do it to the degree that we. Yes, that's right. In 2009 we did not do it to the degree that we're doing it in 2020. And why? That's what we need to know. That if the math is there, it's not hard to make a chart. It's not hard to show us. It's not hard to bring it out. You cannot, even if you're the president of the United States that I love, you cannot stand up there and say, it's bad. It's bad. It's huge bad. I am a skeptic. At nature, I am a skeptic. And so the numbers got to be there if they're coming out of that. Either that or this is way overkill. Which one is it? Goes on in the article. They bolster testing capabilities. Look, they send out all these test kits. Okay, this is the same we had in 2009. The same thing we have now. There's some of the information that they discover, shares personal guidance, early results of the studies. This is, by now we're in May. Look at some of what you got here. Let's see. About 57% were occurring among people between 5 and 24 years of age. 41% of hospitalization were occurring among older children, young adults. The highest rates of hospitalization were among children younger than 5. Next was 5 to 24. So it was really kind of a different type of issue, or the opposite end of the scale anyway, the age of the scale. 71% had underlying medical conditions. That sounds just like we've got now. And only 13% of the hospitalizations were people 50 and older. So that is the difference. So June 11th, remember it started in April. June 11th, you've got a pandemic declared. That's phase 6. We're there in coronavirus or COVID-19. And it speaks of had H1N1. And the United States continued to report the largest number, and it went through summer camps. Maybe you remember that. I vaguely remember some of that taking place. And goes on again, gives some very interesting stuff and results. Goes up through. They discover, or they bring out a vaccination for all of this. And anyway, very interesting historical archives that are given through that, the CDC activities, all that takes place. Again, you can go back and read this. Once again, the article is entitled The 2009 H1N1 Pandemic Summary Highlights that are given there. So let me get back here to the comments that are given. I lost my place. So joke, you can have my green beans, but wait till we get through this and make sure that I'm right, and then you can have my green beans. Joe is my neighbor, by the way, and I appreciate her. Let's see. Oh, Wayne loves sardines. Always have plenty on hand. I don't know whatever happened to our sardines. We probably fed them to the dog or something. I'm not really sure. I do remember I did open them now. Come to think of it, I did open them. And it was the first time I'd ever opened a can of sardines. Now, again, I grew up in New Mexico, and we have trout, and we eat trout, but I didn't know you had an actual fish. And I mean, there's like a little baby fish that's bait in there. Oh, Wayne, what are you thinking, Wayne? Loving those sardines. Interesting stuff. Yeah, interesting. Let's see, Pastor Roger. My daughter went to the grocery store. There were signs that said only 2 items. Normally, she would have bought only 1 item, but she thought I might as well get 2. It's good marketing. That's interesting. It was the same at the grocery store that I went to last night, out of respect, please take 2, only 2, only 2. And I bought 2 dozen eggs. And again, I knew we had eggs at home, but I thought, I don't know if there's going to be a run on eggs next. And so better buy some eggs because they've got them. I'll buy them. Better buy 2 dozen eggs because they've got them. So there is this psychological thing that we, and maybe, I don't know if psychology is the right thing. We do start saying, what if? And we do start saying, I better take some prudent measures. And we do, then begin to prepare for it. And now that we see a number of states closing down, as those of you in California, Illinois, I believe it is, New York, I want to say there's 4 of them, but maybe there's 3 of them, excuse me. And through all that, I think I think there's going to be more because we say, they're going to totally shut this down. I better go get some sardines. I mean, this is bad. I better get sardines, right? Again, is it prudence? Is it fear? Is it somewhere in between? It's interesting times, at least is what it is. Tara, I think I would like. Yeah, Joe is that rare person who always buys ahead. You are rare. I do think I didn't look up any of the statistics on this, but I think that again, most Americans probably buy maybe for a week, and really probably 2-3 days they buy, and they go to McDonald's the rest of the time. Tara says, my husband and I keep eating out because we don't want to eat the food we have in case they do eventually shut it all down. You're helping the restaurants as well. I don't know, in Oklahoma, can you still go into a restaurant? We can't in New Mexico anymore. We have to do the drive-through or carry out. I'm not sure what it is in Oklahoma there. But we are able, and California, California has drive-through. It looks like it. I agree with Dan in Arizona. It's setting us up for the Antichrist beast system. Again, I don't think this is the Antichrist. I don't think it's a direct fulfillment of prophecy, but it sure does set the stage for that, doesn't it? It is, and it's showing. If it's not even setting the stage for that, let's make an assumption. Good, bad, whatever. Let's make the assumption that the age of grace is going to last another 1,000 years. I doubt many would make that assumption, but let's make it. It's going to last another 1,000 years. So the Antichrist is 1,000 years off into the future. Now, even so then our little pandemic here would be utterly unrelated. But it shows how easily the world can be. I'll use the word manipulated. It may not be the best word to use here, but is this manipulation? I doubt it. Maybe so. But you could do something like this for manipulation. It wouldn't be hard, again, with 2 or 3 parties in the world to create a pandemic of fear, and then the need to overtake government rules, regulations, constitutions, to sweep in this, the big knight in shining armor who saves the day. And this is kind of what the Antichrist does. So it's Antichrist-ish at minimum there in all of that. Let's see, Ron down in Texas, in my humble opinion, we will learn from this just as in any crisis. Too many unknowns about this virus fuel irrational guessing. People prepare, don't panic. That should be taught daily. I almost totally agree with you. We will learn from this just as in any crisis. But are we very good at learning from crisis? We've got the records there for the H1N1 crisis. Did we learn there that we didn't do a very good job? It's certainly not, again, when you go back to this article here, the pandemic summary highlights, they don't write about, we should have done this, it would have saved all these lives, we had an overrun on the hospital, and so we need to prepare for this. I don't know if we learn from our crises very well. I hope we do, but I just don't know that I trust humanity that much, I guess you could say. Now, what Ron says then I think is interesting. Too many unknowns about this virus. It may be that that's the nature of the beast, that they literally are unknowns. Again, there's some things I would like to know. Let's take Italy, for example. And Italy has in it, let me get back to that that map here. Let's see. Well, I've lost the map. Here we go. Italy has I believe the highest number of deaths now. Here we go. Bring this up for you. 47,000 confirmed cases in Italy, 4,000 deaths in Italy, 4,400 that are recovered in Italy. Now, what I would like to know, especially those 4,000 deaths, because we're all hungry for information, why aren't there some reporters out there, and maybe there are, and I'm just unaware of them, but some reporters out there saying, okay, let's analyze those 4,000 deaths. Of those 4,000 deaths, how many were there some in a certain location, in a certain province, in a certain apartment building or nursing home? How concentrated were they? Are those 4,000 deaths just randomly scattered throughout Italy? If so, that's more frightening to me. Or of those 4,000 deaths, do we have maybe half of them that are from one town or one area or one province? Asked my wife today as I cooked something. I said, "Do you think that's too much garlic?" And she said, "No, garlic keeps you healthy." And I said, "I don't know. They got all this in Italy. Maybe it doesn't keep you healthy." So somebody analyzed that 4,000 for me, those 4,000 deaths. And I presume they're mostly older people. What were their underlying conditions, and how bad were their underlying conditions? Were they underlying conditions like a person, they were diabetic, but they had their diabetes under control. They were living normal lives. They had jobs, they had families, they were traveling, all that kind of stuff. Or was it this person already had diabetes, they'd already lost some limbs, they were already undergoing some shutdown of some organs, and coronavirus came in, and it was just more. It was the last of the dominoes that pushed things over. What's the analysis of it? I think we ought to be able to figure out the analysis of it and put that. Although I say that, going back to this article right here, CDC estimated that 151,000 to 570,000 people died worldwide of the H1N1 in the first year. That's a big range. What do you mean? We estimate that maybe 150,000 or maybe 575,000 people died. Do we not have good numbers? Why don't we have good numbers? Do we have good numbers today? Did we learn from the H1N1 that we need to do better records? What's going on here through that? By the way, that number comes from the Centers for Disease Control, 2009 H1N1 pandemic. And you can look that up as well. So I do hope you say there are too many unknowns, and I think somebody ought to be focusing on that. We're certainly focusing on some cures. Let's talk about that in a little bit. We're focusing on testing. Is there a national call? I think there should be, by the public, if not from our leaders. Is there a national call to say, journalists, analyze these numbers. Here is everything we know about these numbers. Here's, obviously you can't do this, but name, address, serial number. We're going to give all the data we can without, just like I said, giving their name, address, and serial number. And I want you to analyze them. Let's figure out everything we can. Maybe somebody's doing this, but again, if they are doing it, we're not hearing that they're doing it, and they're talking to us every day and telling us stuff every day. So I think there are too many unknowns, and I think it does fuel irrational guessing. And you've got some skeptics like me and some of you who just automatically tend to say, I don't trust the government. And I don't. I've never trusted the government. I don't trust the government with anything. I've never seen anything that the government does very well. Stick to national defense because nobody else can do it. I don't know how to, have a corporation for national defense. So it's got to be a government thing. But the government can't fix our roads. The government can't figure out how to get us a driver's license without having to sit all afternoon. The government can't make a website, on and on of the things that the government can't do. But now, trust the government. Why? Because I might get sick. I better trust the government. Oh, yeah. Yes. Oh, yeah. Why? I'm not going to do it. And I think most of you are not going to do it. Thanks, Stephen. You'd make a great Rush Limbaugh replacement. I pray that he doesn't need one soon. But thank you. Let's see who said, I'm up in Washington State. Why is gas prices going down? There's two things I want to know about that. One is, as Dan says, oil prices went down. But there's Roger. I was going to say the same thing. I wish gas prices went down here. So Roger's in Arizona. I'm in New Mexico. I bought gas, I think it was yesterday. It was $2.49 a gallon. That's what it was about 3 weeks ago, $2.49 a gallon. I keep hearing all this, gas might get down to $1.29, and people in Oklahoma and stuff are showing all these cheap gas pictures, and I'm paying $2.49. Gas has always been a little higher in Taos than even down the road, 30 miles to the next town, Espanola. I try, if I'm going down there, I always try to be on an empty tank because I can fill up 50 cents a gallon cheaper down there. So a little bit in my community, it's tourism, it's remote nature, it's lack of competition. And down in Espanola, the next town down there's some competition that comes from Indian lands and the lack of taxes that are given there, and they're giving them a run for the money and make it cheaper there. Now, so two things I want to say is, there's this oil argument, battle going on between oil producing countries, OPEC, and Russia. So they're kind of flooding the market a little bit. There is a lack of demand now because we're not traveling like we were traveling. And, airlines are so far down, and even automobile transportation in my town. Normally this spring break week, it would have been bumper to bumper traffic. And yet there's literally no traffic in my town right now. So some of it's demand. So you got a supply and a demand issue, basically, I think is running that. Now, I would like to know why that's not even across the board. Are the retailers in New Mexico holding more? It seems like it should go down some. Now, I think a lot of it, by the way, is taxes. And if I'm elected, what I would require is that they show the price of gasoline and then they show the price of taxes. And it comes out when you're paying your bill, they're going to say, here it is. It is $1.79 for your gas, and it's 69 cents for your taxes for every single dollar you use. I think if we separated that out, we do on sales tax. I think if we separated that out, we might call our governor and we might say, you've got to do something about there's all this money that I'm paying. So that's some reason, but it seems like even in New Mexico and Arizona with high gas taxes, it ought to be going down some. I mean, maybe I'm $2.29 instead of your $1.89 or whatever because of the tax difference. But it's interesting. I'll tell you what, some of you, I won't get to it because I'm behind on the comments here. I'll get to it later. I'll catch up to it. But tell me what your gas prices are in your neighborhood. Tell me where you are and how much gas is. Let's do a little comparison. We'll see here middle of the night and see what it is and bring that. Interesting. Speaking of Rush Limbaugh, Chuck in Oklahoma says what you're saying tonight is exactly what Rush said over a week ago. I guess I'm behind. I don't listen to Rush anymore. Not because I don't like Rush. I don't listen to Rush because we don't have a radio station that gets it. We're too far away from the big radio stations. And so our local stations are mostly country music. And so I just don't have a place to listen to Rush anymore unless I were to podcast it or something like that, which I don't do. So every now and then, if I get down south to the big city, and I'm at the right time, I'll turn Rush on and see, can we eat African violets? We better look that up. You don't need a reason to live. You need an African violet. I was thinking, I need to get one here. There's several things I need to do to this what's the word for it? Crude script here. But the stars are nice, aren't they? I was just outside the door here a moment ago and saw the big bright star. I should know the name of it. I don't. For Bootes is the Deccan of the constellation. It's a sub-constellation, if you will. Beautiful out there tonight. But I don't know if we can eat African violets or not. I wouldn't do it before you Google it. And even at that, fuzzy leaves don't seem like they would taste very good. So I probably will go for the begonia first if I have to. I'm going to Google both of them. But if it gets there and both of them are edible, I'm going for the begonia first. It looks a little more like something you could put some salad dressing on and make nice. I just don't know about the whole African violet thing. Although it's the snow's melting here. A few weeks from now, we will have dandelions galore, and I hear you can eat those. So I think I'm good for a couple of months before I have to eat the begonias. Let's see. Let's see. RO. Joe, tell me what RO is. Because I'm not sure. It says 4 to 7 sick, hospitalized 3 weeks, death rate 4% worldwide, 1.3% in U.S. I'm not following all the numbers there. Sorry. Kevin says H1N1 flu was less contagious than coronavirus. The basic reproduction number, also called the R naught. Okay, that's what the RO is. I'm sorry. Value is the expected number of individuals who can catch the virus. Okay, so the R naught number, how contagious it is, being higher, if that's the right way to go on that, for coronavirus, which certainly could make some difference. What's the hospitalization rate and all of that kind of stuff? And perhaps that's what Joe is trying to say here. In all that, death rate 4% worldwide. I presume that is of coronavirus, 1.3% in U.S. We should ask as well why the death rate is so dramatically different, and it is dramatically different, 1% versus 4%. Is it the level of healthcare? Very well could be. Although Italy is not known to be a third world country, And yet maybe they bought into a socialism that Bernie Sanders is trying to sell us. Have you noticed, maybe it's just my imagination, but this whole thing has caused Bernie to go away. But I think, strangely enough, we don't have Bernie anymore, or I think we're not about to have Bernie anymore. I think technically he's still around in the race. But boy, there's a lot of socialism now. A lot more socialism than there was. In fact, I was thinking just the other day. I mentioned this morning on the radio interview in Green Bay, also. And I was thinking someday out there we're going to say, you remember those 6 weeks in 2020 when we became socialists? Because that's really kind of what's happening. Is we are buying into socialism so quickly. We're buying into this idea that government is the only thing that can help us. And I just am not so sure there. Yeah, are not. That we got all that. How many people one person affects is the thing. Thank you for that definition there. Helpful. The shortage of masks does scares the medical people. I think probably ought to. And is it again? If we're going to learn from this, and I hope we do, we ought to say, what do we do in cases of pandemic, and can we be ready? Is it reasonable, for example, to have 200 million extra masks in storage somewhere? My guess is that if we're looking at that, we say, well, no, you can't do that because the rats will get in, they'll eat them, the dust will settle on whatever. You know, they have a shelf life. That shelf life's probably pretty long, but in the end, you know, a strategic reserve of masks probably is limited. Maybe they're always going to say we can never fully be prepared. We can never have enough hospital beds for what might be, because it simply would be too expensive to do so. But maybe we look at it and say, and maybe we have these today, we look at it and say, okay, how can we have, I don't know what you call them, MASH units that come in, temporary hospitals? Are we okay with that? Is that good? You know, a lot of things we can learn from this and take that out. And so, yeah, that is a scary thing. And I think, and many have said this, so it's nothing new. The whole supply chain issue, I think when we gave up our manufacturing capabilities, and for the most part, that's what the United States did, I think that was a strategic blunder on our part. And so we ought to not say, shame on you companies for sending all our manufacturing over to China. What we ought to say is, why did we send all of our manufacturing to China? And I think there we'll get to find that if we were in the same shoes as the CEO that sent it to China, we would have done the same thing, because we have brought about so much regulation, so much red tape that brings so much cost that literally we couldn't do it here. So it was the supply chain thing, I would say, is a government created problem. I am convinced, I'm a small business owner, I'm convinced that business owners want to do to do business at home. We've got some on here that, you know, do business in China and manufacturing in China. I have no doubt they would have rather driven 30 miles down the road to the capital city or whatever it was and said, hey, let's do business. Let's shake hands on it right here. We speak the same language. I don't have to worry about the culture, all that kind of stuff. Here's what I need you to build. Here's a picture of it. Here's the model. You come up with it. You tell me how much. They would far sooner what to do business in the United States, but they can't do business in the United States. Many times it's utterly impossible for them to do the business in the United States because the regulations, the red tape, the OSHA. I'll give you an example. My son has taught himself coding, that's computer coding, and he wrote and sold a nice little app to a factory that helps them to solve an OSHA requirement. Now, they had to pay him. He made the money, and I tell you what he's already thinking. Why, I just need to know what OSHA requirements are, and I can make lots of money. That's an entrepreneur for you, right? So if I figure out what OSHA requires of that factory, cha-ching, 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 cha-ching. Sorry if that's too loud. But it ought to be loud. And that is a government-created problem. But listen, it's not necessarily because of the Democrats or the Republicans. It's because of the deep state. It's because of the bureaucracy. I don't even know, and again, some of you might know, I don't even know if the United States Congress ever created OSHA. As far as I know, some presidential decree created OSHA. And I can almost promise you that all of the ordinances within OSHA were not created by Senator so-and-so and Congressman who's it. They were created by a government bureaucrat, and we let that go. And that bureaucracy has killed our manufacturing. That's what sent it to China. So can we learn something from here? Yeah, get rid of OSHA. That's what we can learn. Guess what happens if people are falling off ladders and hurting themselves and being burned down in the factory and all that kind of stuff? There's lawsuits. There's laws that are broken, real laws that Senator so-and-so put on the books, and on you can go. There's already enough stuff. And OSHA comes along and says, now, if you've got over 50 people working for you, then your toilet can only flush 1.5 gallons. And every 3 days, you've got to have a test run through there to make sure you only use 1.5 gallons per flush. And you have to send in this report the 14th day following the second Monday of the third month. And literally the guy says, I'm going to China. And that's what happens. And so now we don't make anything here. We can fix that. But we can't fix it by mailing people a check or by forcing a company to do something. That's going to work for 30 minutes. The only way we can fix it is get rid of all the bureaucracy. And I promise you, if we get rid of the bureaucracy, there will be a surgical mask company created tomorrow morning, and they will be up and running, by Thursday of next week. They will get on it like a frog on a June bug because there's money to be made there, and capitalism works, and bureaucracy has shut down capitalism, and that might kill us today. We'll find out. With the shortage of masks and all these things, I don't know if there's a shortage of sardines. Certainly not my house. Let's see. A few restaurants open in Weatherford. Oh no, they're all closed down in Weatherford, Oklahoma. It looks like. Maybe not. Oh, the Fast Taco drive-through and McDonald's drive-through are open. I think that's true in our town as well. Drive-throughs. In fact, I drove through town earlier today, and I did notice a lot of places closed down. Understand, we don't have any tourists here. Really almost couldn't. They couldn't go out to eat, all those kind of things. But the restaurants, I noticed several of them had a big sign out front. We're open, drive-through open, call this number for carryout. Trying to keep their employees and keep things going there through all of that that is given there. Let's see. Venus says Chinese migrant workers. I think it's Google as a noun, not Google as a verb. Google Chinese migrant workers in Italy may have been the reason they got hit so badly. At least one reporter here in Oz thinks so. That's the land down under where Vina is from. And most so-called journalists are bubble-headed bleach blondes. I might start using that. Okay, here's some gas. $3.19 for gas in California, and you can't even go anywhere. So mine's $2.49. Yours is $3.19. I would almost say, I think probably pretty assuredly could say 95% of that difference is in taxes. California having the higher taxes, of course. Bruce says gas in Green Bay was between $1.69 and $1.89 today. So again, here's a range. Green Bay $1. Let's go with $1.69 to $3.19, $2.49 here in the middle. That's a big difference in all of that. Let's see. Pansies. Yeah, Joe, we can eat pansies, can't we? And I think pansies will even grow up here in the mountains where we are, aren't they? So, yeah, there we go. Pansies. Don't eat your African violets. You don't need a reason to live. You need an African violet. So if you didn't have an African violet, what would you do? Don't eat the African violet. Eat the pansies. Olympia, Washington, 265 on the low end, 339 on the high end. So the West Coast seems to be more than the Rocky Mountain states so far, and east of the Rockies seems to be the cheapest place to get there. What paranormal thing would you like to talk about? Someone ought to bring up, we haven't really talked about much paranormal, have we? Somebody bring up a good paranormal topic. We'll see if we can bring that out. As I was looking at that star out there this evening, I thought one of the things I ought to do in the future on this, I'm not prepared to do tonight, but one of the things I would do is take some of the constellations and their decans, the sub-constellations, if you will, and just talk about them a little on the in fact, maybe I could put them up here, and I could, point and this star and this star, and teach you a little planetarium. That'd be fun on these late night things, since you can't sleep anyway. Yeah, good idea. We'll do that. Thanks. No, you didn't give me the idea, did you? But maybe someone out there has got a good paranormal topic through all of that. Don Henley, still a member of the Eagles. That's paranormal, isn't it? Let's see. Speaking of stars in Taos, mysterious faded star Betelgeuse has started to brighten again. I haven't been reading about this. So Betelgeuse is one of those stars in Orion's belt, or is it his foot? Maybe it's his foot. I'll have to check that out. So it had been fading, now is starting to brighten again. I'll have to look at that. I have not read on that, but it's very interesting. As I've mentioned before, I love to look at stars, and I live in the best place to look at stars. And Betelgeuse and Orion's belt is just getting out. You've got to be up, I think, early in the morning right now to be able to see it. It is more of a November through March star that you can look at. So it may be starting to brighten again, but you're not going to see it again for a number of months, at least in the Northern Hemisphere. But things will come around, and I say the best time for stargazing in the United States, by the way, is late August into September, first part of October. Let's call it September. And that's because you can see the Milky Way so clearly. The Milky Way is too low in the on the horizon now to see it. You've got some beautiful stars out there, Big Dipper and Orion and things like that you see through the winter. But I don't know what could be more spectacular than the Milky Way that goes right across the zenith of the sky from one horizon to another. And literally, when people come out here to visit us, I say, hey, you know, let's stick around long enough that it's going to be dark, and let's get out there in the open sky and turn off the lights. And I usually, if I take them out there, I drive out there, turn off the lights, and out there, my house is surrounded by trees, so we can see it decent, but it's better. Get out there in the meadow, and I turn off the car and shut off the lights, and we just sit in the car for a moment to get your eyes used to it. And every time we get out of the car, even before they look up, you can audibly hear the gasp of, wow. And literally, other than the fact that you get a neck ache, you can just sit out there and look and gaze, and it is absolutely wonderful. And the heavens declare the glory of God. We'll talk about it one of these days. Some of these days, we'll just put that up. I can put pictures of stars up here, or I can even get rid of myself just like that. Hey, it's kind of like my rapture button in it. Someday there's going to be a rap. That worked out well, didn't it? I've been trying to get Nathan to do this for a long time. Now I just figured it out. That's all I need. Except that in the studio, we don't have green screen. So I don't know that it would work quite as well. Let me see here. I tell you what, there is Chuck has worked in China with China. Our China partners wanted me to order a container load of masks and hand sanitizer at a nickel a mask, but I told them I didn't know how to sell them and the virus would be gone in 2 weeks. That's very interesting, because that says that China has them and they're wanting to sell them. I don't know. Somebody might want to take you up on the offer. They might buy them from you for 10 cents a mask, Chuck. Maybe buy them. Can we get a buyer here for Chuck? Let's see. We got a container of masks, a bunch of hand sanitizer, nickel a mask. Here we go. Is there a 10? Do I hear 10 cents? Blah 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 blah. Sold to the man in Minneapolis. Okay. So I see that some people say they tried to find me on YouTube, but had to go to his channel to get the live video. That's actually not tonight. It's not YouTube shadow banning me. That does happen some. But tonight it was an error on our part. That we had to change the link because we set it up wrong, and therefore some of you went on a wild goose chase. I apologize for that. That was us through there, and appreciate that. Okay, here is an article, a couple articles I want to show you here. One is too long for us to go through, but this article from the Children's Health Defense, children'shealthdefense.org. It is March the 20th, that's today. Does the coronavirus pandemic serve a global agenda? Again, I don't know who sent that guy is. And I don't really know much about the Children's Health Defense Fund. So, check this out. I'm not necessarily endorsing it, but it does ask some interesting questions. Health authorities remain silent on efficient COVID-19 treatment. Now, it talks about, hey, maybe we know how to fix this, but they're not going there. And it talks about why they're not going there. And has some very interesting things about vaccine wars and some things that are there, and how it went to Iran and how it went to Italy. They say at the beginning of the disease outbreak, the Italian authorities considered it unnecessary to impose a quarantine. It would stigmatize the children who had just come from China. So they put it with a group that came from China rather than a Google employee. Um, and a lot of controversy, it says, about the number of deaths that can really be ascribed to the epidemic. That's kind of what I was asking earlier, is that I would like to know more behind these numbers. Testing is not very reliable and suffers many biases. Now, I'm not just going to take their word because I'm a skeptic, but how reliable is testing and what biases are included in testing? And here we may run across this later because I'm going to come to this article, but the tests are currently not measuring the incidence of coronavirus disease, but the activity of specialists searching for them. Now, what that means is we don't really know how many people have coronavirus disease. We know that here are hot spots and they're rushing there to test. And that's why New York had such a increase the last few days, because these are specialists searching for coronavirus. And this article is saying maybe we need to look at this in a different way. And I think those are good questions to ask. It talks about France and the coronavirus, the silent war in the treatment against COVID-19. The coronavirus epidemic reveals a huge discrepancy between the WHO health strategies and the reality for science and doctors who put patients first. Go read this article if you get a chance. Once again, it's kind of a long article that we would spend a lot of time going through here tonight, but it's Children's Health Defense. Does the coronavirus pandemic serve a global agenda? Now, with that, here is another article. This one is a little dated, so some of it is out. It came out, I believe, in February. Corona hype. Without PCR tests, there would be no reason for special alarms. He says, this is where the other article quoted, we are currently not measuring the incidence of coronavirus disease, but the activities of the specialists. Goes on to talk, I just want to bring you some of the highlights of this article, and I'll show you where to find it in just a moment. We have experienced similar alarmist actions by virologists in the last 2 decades, whose swine flu pandemic was, in fact, one of the mildest flu waves in history. Now, again, question the assumptions on that. Be skeptical of that. But is WHO trustworthy? We can ask that question, right? Is WHO trustworthy? Many institutions that are now again alerting us for the need for caution have let us down and failed us on several occasions. But of course, we should trust them today, right? It's go ahead. It's say, what's your track record? I'm going to go by your track record. That's okay to do. Far too often, they are institutionally corrupted by secondary interests from business and or politics. Now, let me just ask you, if I had asked you last November, do you think the World Health Organization or the Center for Disease Control could possibly be institutionally corrupted by secondary interests? How many of you would have said, absolutely, I think it's possible? I would say probably 99.9% of our audience, maybe even 100%. Last November would have said, yep, CDC, World Health Organization, National Center for Virology, whatever. Yeah, very good possibility that it's institutionally corrupted. But today we're supposed to just trust it. November we wouldn't have, December we wouldn't have, January we wouldn't have. But now, it's a pandemic. Oh, yes, they're absolutely right. Even though they weren't right, but they are right. Goes on to say, oops, sorry about that, wrong button. Now I got to figure out how to get us all in the right order. There we go. Okay. Many institutions that are now again alerting us, let's see, I got there. If we do not want to chase frivolous panic messages, but rather to responsibly assess the risk of spreading infection, we must use solid epidemiological, how's that word out, methodology. This includes looking at the normal, the baseline, before you can speak of anything exceptional. It goes on to talk about some of the normal there. It's kind of interesting. In view of the well-known fact that in every flu wave, 15% of acute respiratory illness are coming along with coronaviruses. The case numbers that are now continuously added up are still completely within the normal range. About 1 per 1,000 infected are expected to die during flu season by selective application of PCR tests, for example, only in clinics and medical outpatient clinics. This rate can easily be pushed up to frightening levels because those who need help are usually the worse off than those who are recovering at home. Now, what that says, I believe, is that if we only are testing those who are symptomatic, and that's what they've been asking us to do, then the numbers are going to be higher than the coronavirus people who don't have it. Who have it but are not symptomatic. So the actual numbers of coronavirus it becomes inflated because, again, so many people, they keep telling us this, you might be a carrier. It's asymptomatic. So we don't really know what the hospitalization rate is. We know what it is of those who happen to get tested. That's what it's talking about, this PCR testing. So that can be pushed up to frightening levels. In fact, let me give you an example. Of those who die might be pretty high. And then we would say death rate on coronavirus is, what's a false number? That's a death rate on the testing of coronavirus. So there's an issue here just in the numbers. Again, numbers don't lie, but you can lie with numbers. Goes on to say the colorful maps that are now being shown to us on paper or screens are impressive, but they usually have less to do with disease than the activity of skilled virologists and crowds of sensationalist reporters. However, it's better to be tested for coronavirus, even with a slight flu-like infection. The risk of coronavirus detection would be 7 to 15%. It goes on to talk about this PCR stuff. It's just another name for acute respiratory illness. Now, again, I'm not a virologist, but acute respiratory illness, I think, is what they're worried about with coronavirus. Coronavirus gives you acute respiratory illness. A lot of other things give you acute respiratory illness. It's just another name for acute respiratory illness, which, as every year, put 30 to 70% of all people in our countries more or less out of action for a week or two every winter. According to prospective ARI virus monitoring in Scotland from 2005 to 2013, the most common pathogens for or of acute respiratory illness were, number 1, rhinovirus, number 2, influenza A virus, number 3, influenza B virus, number 4, RS virus, number 5, coronaviruses, the various coronaviruses, of course, SARS, MERS, and others that come through here. So again, what he's saying is we have a normal. Even though coronavirus is the novel coronavirus, there's a normal out there that we can look at, and we can see how far are we off the normal. Now, again, he's got old numbers here. This is an old article, but what he was saying at the time is we're in the normal range. So if there is now to be an increasing number of proven coronavirus infections in China or Italy, can anyone say how often such examinations were carried out in previous winters, by whom, for what reason, with what results? When someone claims that something is increasing, he must surely refer to something that has been observed before. I'm sure many of those responsible public health officials would probably risk their jobs today, as they did with the swine flu back then, if they would follow their experience and oppose the mainstream. We ought to be asking these doctors that are up there in front of us every day, what's the minority report? Dr. Fucci, you've got a large staff. Are there doctors that are saying otherwise? It's just a good question for a reporter to ask, and he ought to answer it. And in fact, I think he ought to be standing up there every day saying, hey, of our doctors, X% of them take this position that I'm taking. There's another X% of them that disagree with me on this, and they have spoken their disagreement. We need some whistleblowers here so that we have the full information. Now, what we might look at is that he says absolutely everybody at the, under all the various alphabet of the CDC, every doctor agrees with these numbers. I think that would be impossible, because there's just different ways of looking at numbers. And I've known lots of doctors in my life, and then there's not two doctors that agree on anything. And so what is the other story? That's what we ought to be hearing and looking at. And some reporters ought to be going out there and finding those doctors and saying, hey, you disagree with this. You're a virologist. You've got some skills. You've got some experience. Tell me what it is. That's another interesting article, Corona Hype. It's called. Again, it is an old article, so it may be out. And it is... You can find it in a number of places. Wolfgang Wadarg, he's German. And this is, you can tell it is in fact, this is a German website. Notice all the German names that are given there. And this is translated into English. You can see that some as you read that various article. Now, here's a very interesting one by the Raymond James and Associates. Look at this. If a COVID-19 therapy doesn't benefit a stock, does it even exist? Raymond James is a very respected analyst company. Look again what they said. If the COVID-19 therapy doesn't benefit a stock, does it even exist? Here's our COVID-19 therapeutics take. Based on, this is from March 10th, based on emerging data, chloroquine, I believe is how you say it, chloroquine, we'll go with chloroquine, looks to be as promising a therapeutic candidate as any to treat COVID-19, and may turn out to be more effective, scalable, and affordable than either Gills, remdesivir, ABBVs, there's names, but chloroquine, catch this, chloroquine doesn't directly benefit any stock, which is probably why it seems to be getting less attention. That said, we're not the first to suggest that chloroquine could be the solution to COVID-19. The linked author goes so far as to say, if clinical data confirm the biological results, the novel coronavirus-associated disease will have become one of the simplest and cheapest to treat and prevent among infectious respiratory diseases. We went on extra sourcing below. Commentary given the quality data speaks about right now it can be sketchy. Remdesivir, Kaletra. There are obviously many more treatments being tested, but it's a very interesting question there, isn't it? And the reason it doesn't benefit any stock is because chloroquine is it's generic, and so I understand it's readily available for about $5 a dose, and what they're saying is, it looks like tests say that could fix it. But nobody's going to run out there and push there. Why? It's it doesn't benefit a stock. So that goes back again to that article that we just looked at. I'll bring that right back up here. Far too often, they are he's talking about who and whatnot. They are institutionally corrupted by secondary interests from business and or politics. Could it be that the cure for it is right down at the pharmacy, readily available for $5? And yet we're not hearing about it. Now, again, I don't know that that's the cure. I don't know if they know that that's the cure. But in fact, I think they say they don't know that that's the cure. But certainly, again, it's worthy of asking the question, isn't it? And trying to figure all of that out through there. Yeah. Very interesting here. Let me catch up with my chats here that you're giving. Let's see. I've lost my place here. Okay, shadow banning. There's where we are. And Pastor Roger is exactly right. It's not shadow banning. He says, I think it has to do with how he's posting it on YouTube. He needs Nathan to get back to work. Amen. If Nathan was here, it wouldn't be sounding like this. And you wouldn't have had to look all over the world for the link and all that kind of stuff. But he's over there taking care of that beautiful baby girl. I went and took care of her a little bit today myself. It was nice here. Okay, let's see here if we've got anything. Tobacco and Ebola virus on 2 medical persons we brought back. Let's see. Malaria. Yeah, malaria drug. Quinine, is that how you say it? Hydroquinine plus a Z-Pack, Joe says, has 100% cure rate in southern France. The study has been peer-reviewed. That's very interesting. And I think that, some of those things, and I hope that, okay, and here Dan says Trump talks every day about chloroquine. That's good. I'm glad he is. And maybe, I don't know. We could go back and see, was he talking about it March the 10th or in these 10 days as now he come through? I hope so. And I hope that they're finding these cures. I haven't watched the last few days of these reports that come back, but hopefully it is done. Now, okay. So that's the malaria drug. I had heard of the malaria drug. I didn't realize it was chloroquine. And so, okay. Chloroquine, whatever it is, plus the Z-Pack, 100% effective. That's very good news. And I think that probably today we've got to start focusing on what those cures are, what's effective, and get out there and try to make it work and go for it. And let people try something, because on some of these, like that word, and the Z-Pack, that's why we call it a Z-Pack, because we don't know how to say that word. Those have very few negative side effects. So it's not like a new drug that hasn't been tested. I know some of those are out there, we're testing these new drugs, we're going to rush it out. That's all well and good, but maybe we've got something right here that can do it and can fix this thing and bring it about, because certainly, again, we've got a major problem on our hands, both in the way we deal with it and in what the problem itself is. Interesting. Well, let's see. Anything else you want to talk about tonight before we go to bed here? It's always a blessing just to come and, some of these late nights here that we've had. This is our fourth one here together, but some of these late nights have been very interesting, to say the least, and come back and take that. But I'll give you a few more minutes. If you've got a theological, biblical worldview question, you got a coronavirus question. We've talked about that an awful lot. You got a question about the stars. You got a question about numbers. You got a question about what do you got a question about, or you want to talk about, or you got a comment about? Open Line Friday. How's that? Chuck says the MD group and the MS guarantee curing with IV solution using a mix of hydrogen peroxide. Very interesting. The MD group in MS. I'm assuming that's Mississippi. So the doctor group in Mississippi guarantee curing with an IV solution using a mix of hydrogen peroxide. Very interesting. And Dan says, okay, look up how tobacco cured Ebola. I wasn't aware of that. But I think tobacco is readily available. As a matter of fact, Tobacco is very readily available in Africa. They grow it all over Africa. It's one of the biggest crops in Africa and North Carolina too, I think. That's interesting. So often these things do have a very earthy local cure if we can figure it out. And okay, Minnesota, not Mississippi. It is. I think I'm not necessarily a natural remedy guy, but I'm not against natural remedies either. I just don't know about them like some of you know about them. But to take a look at some of that, there is some real truth there. And if what if it's something again so close? And as a matter of fact, I just looked up this tobacco thing here. How to grow an Ebola vaccine with a tobacco plant. Ebola drug made by tobacco plants. Okay, let's look at. Here's one from Politico, which is not normally a certainly not a right-wing organization. This is February 15th, so again, it's a little old, but let's go ahead and take a look at it. Could tobacco cure coronavirus? Don't laugh. The Pentagon's medical research arm credited the use of tobacco plants in 2012 for quick development of 10 million doses of flu vaccine. One of the most criticized industries in America, now joining the race to stop the coronavirus epidemic. Reynolds American. Wouldn't that be kind of ironic if the tobacco company became a pharmaceutical? Reynolds American, North American cigarette giant behind the Camel, Newport, and Pall Mall brands, is infecting fast-growing tobacco plants with genetically modified coronavirus to see if they can produce antibodies for a possible vaccine. It's a decades-old idea Reynolds tried with limited success during the Ebola crisis of 2015 and could offset declining cigarette sales, new tobacco age restrictions, and possible menthol ban. Public health experts say the experiment, if successful, could be scaled up quickly to respond to an international outbreak. Interesting article there. You ought to take a look at that. Let's see, this is, February 12th, so their data didn't work out there. On February 12th, 1,368 deaths. And today, March the 20th, we are, let me make sure I'm worldwide here. I'm going to reload this. I think it's more about 12,000. 11,300, let's call it 11,400 deaths, 13 deaths. So that's a little over a month's time. We've gone from 1,368 to 11,399. Total cases a month ago, 46,000. Now, of course, we're at the 275,000 mark. Many of these on both sides of this just being added in the last couple of days. Through all that, interesting about some of these, again, very simple drugs and whether or not there is that possibility there. Let's see here. C.H. Spurgeon never got Ebola or coronavirus because he smoked cigars. Yeah, you're right. Maybe that's the answer. Smoke a cigar and see what happens. Well, I tell you what, I think that we will call it a night. You've got a Saturday ahead of you. Where are you going on the weekend? Maybe to the back bedroom. Go to the guest bedroom. Take a vacation. Get out to the guest bedroom and enjoy some of that. Sit out on the back porch, maybe. Take a walk in the neighborhood. Can we do that anymore? and get some sunshine, some fresh air if you can. Let me tell you about our Sunday broadcast. We will be at 9:45 Mountain Time. I'll be teaching the book of Acts. And because we're changing our in-house schedule just a little bit, I think the sermon, which normally starts about 11:15, would start about 11 o'clock this Sunday. And so I hope that you will join us if you don't have a church that you are able to be in, or that they are broadcasting at that particular time. Check us out, 9:45 a.m. Mountain Time, 11 a.m. Mountain Time, a Bible study and a sermon. Look forward to seeing you there. randywhiteministries.org. And hey, before I close out, I think most of you probably know, but John Nelson Darby Academy is helping those who are unable to go to school for the rest of the year, or fear they might be unable to go to school for the rest of the year. Go to jndarbyacademy.org. Click the blog button and read the first article. It tells how you can get your student in really still as early as Monday. You can get your student started, finish out the year. We will waive the matriculation fee, which normally is $250. So you just start out with tuition, $100 a month, and finish it out. And they'll be done by May the 22nd and have done their coursework and finish the 3rd grade, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th, or 12th grade. And we would be happy to have them and to help them out. They can come back, join us again next year. We'd be happy for that. They still won't have to pay a matriculation fee because it's a one-time thing. So this is a good time to enroll. And even if they don't want to come back next fall, you finished out this year. You can start next fall, Lord willing, in a normal way. And that will be a blessing for them, I hope, and it would be a blessing for us to have them. Once again, jndarbyacademy.org. You can find a link to that at randywhiteministries.org as well. A blessing to be with you on this Friday night. And Dan, I'm glad you're trying to get your grandkids into Darby. This is the time to do it. Save $250 per kid and get them in. And will be a blessing. We added several this week and ready to add several more. So this is the time to get them. Don't waste the rest of the school year. Even when the government says, we're done, you don't have to worry about it. Your kids want to learn. You want them to learn. You want them to have something to do other than watch TV all day. So, hey, they just will learn geometry or something, right? And it will be a blessing for them. And again, they might just finish the year, go back to their classroom next year. That's all well and good, their family decision. But we would love to have them give us a try. jndarbyacademy.org. We'll see you there. You don't need a reason to live. You need an African violet. Go get you an African violet. You can't this weekend. The nursery's closed. But a blessing to be with you. Thanks for joining us here on our crude little late night broadcast. Very delighted you are here. Someday there's going to be a rapture. But today. See you soon.